is a Beach Glass Media production.
In a world where the news moves faster than how a leftist immediately calls anyone who disagrees with them a racist, the world has seen a plethora of compelling news stories in the past few weeks. For starters, we're currently in the tail end of the month of June, so naturally, or unnaturally, it's Pride Month. Yes, that's right, the month of Pride, which some philosophers would consider Pride to be the queen of all vice, has somehow now become the vice of all queens. But putting the jokes aside, on a serious note, didn't you guys get the memo? I hate to break it to you, but in case you didn't realize this, Donald Trump is the president, so no one really cares about Pride Month anymore. I mean, what is this, 2023 or something? After extensive research, polls have been showing that Pride Month is a thing of the past, and now, according to research experts, also kinda gay. But hopefully, now that Pride is losing steam, maybe we should give other deadly sins a try. You know, perhaps we can try Glutton Month or Sloth Month. Yes, Sloth Month. Now, that sounds like a rip-roaring good time. Or maybe even Envy Month or Greed Month? Ah, yes, envy and greed, the stuff socialists are made of. Look, all I'm saying is Pride Month is going the way of the buffalo, so why not think of our future and start promoting other bad habits? You feel me? Okay. Enough with the gay stuff. Nobody wants gayness, or gayish stuff rubbed all over their faces anymore. And for some strange reason, I'm beginning to get this tingling sensation that a leftist is going to jump out behind the bushes or something and call me a racist at any second now. So in other news, this past month, Carmelo Anthony was finally sentenced to 35 years in prison for fatally stabbing 17-year-old Austin Metcalf at a high school track meet in Frisco, Texas. You might be wondering, who on earth brings a knife to an event where the purpose of the event is to run around in circles? Carmelo Anthony, that's who. Now, obviously, the only reason why this made headline news was because historically, if a white person kills a black person, it's racism. But if black person kills a white person, it's self-defense. And of course, if you don't believe that a black person acted in self-defense whilst killing whitey, well, then you're simply racist. Just like when O.J. killed his wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, we all know it was self-defense. Case closed. Allegedly. Anyway, it turns out that thou shalt not kill, one of the 10 commandments, is still a winning proposition. And if you haven't tried thou shalt not kill yet, well, give it a shot. It's actually not that bad. It might be a little hard for some of you, you know, those of you with hatred in your hearts, and to those of you who are socialists too. But I digress. The best part about practicing thou shalt not kill is, get this, you won't go to jail for murdering. Hey, don't knock it until you try it. Also, in recent news, America celebrated Juneteenth. That's right, a federal holiday that reminds us Americans that the Republican Party freed the Democrats' slaves. Yes, just a friendly reminder, that's all. Don't even think about owning people. And yes, I'm talking you Democrats, more specifically you Democratic Socialists. The kids in public schools don't belong to you. You think you own them, but you don't. You have to remember that. Just saying, maybe tie a little bow on your finger. That might help. Shifting gears a little bit, the reflecting pool at Lincoln's Memorial has been making waves in the news lately. Not for making waves, obviously, but because it started making something else in the pool. Algae. That's right, folks. A pool of water is the latest thing that has Americans divided along party lines. What's the problem with the reflecting pool, you ask? Well, Donald Trump wanted to spiffy up the reflecting pool and make it look nice for America's 250th birthday. And just like every other president who has tried to make improvements to the reflecting pool, it actually started to look nice for a while. But then, once the Democrats got a little sense in their noggins, remembered that they are all now Democratic Socialists and all went, hey, wait, Trump cleaned this up? Oh, hell no. we can't give Trump a win. And then their hearts shrunk a few sizes after that mini protest that day. Yes, sir, Trump's opponents are simply green with envy, or should I say green with algae. And the pool started growing with algae, and now it looks a little ugly, just like how it used to look before Trump was in the White House. Then the Democrats got happy that it got a little more ugly. But speaking of ugly, another eyesore was erected and opened to the American public recently. And no, it has nothing to do with Bill Clinton and the Oval Office. No, I'm talking about the Barack Obama Presidential Library. Yes, what's the best way to describe this monstrosity of a building? Well, we used the term ugly already, so maybe trash can? It kind of looks like a correctional facility, which may be useful in Chicago, where this thing is located because of the high crime rate. But yeah, think of Squidward's house from the cartoon SpongeBob SquarePants, and I think you'll have an idea of what I'm talking about. If you like brutalist architecture and you're a socialist, then you'll probably love the design of the Barack Obama Presidential Library, because it is in fact ugly. But speaking of ugly, New York recently had their primary elections, and the results are in. Now, you know that on this podcast, I haven't really said too many nice things about the New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani on account that he's a democratic socialist, as if to add an adjective in front of the word socialist somehow makes the thing you're describing any better. For instance, think of the term my truth. Are we talking about actual truth? Well, no, it's not the truth. My truth is only perceived to be truth from an individual standpoint. Kind of like an opinion. Just use the word opinion, you nitwits. Or think of the term social justice. Is it actual justice? Well, no. I mean, it's not justice at all because it's not applied equally to everyone. In some instances, if you have a little more melanin than the average specimen, then you get a lighter sentencing. So, of course, social justice is a bad concept. And not justice, just unequal treatment of people. Different strokes for different folks, some might say. So now, think of the term democratic socialism. Is it socialism? You know, the same socialism that has destroyed nations such as the Soviet Union, Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, Yugoslavia, and Cambodia, just to name a few. Those governments may have introduced socialist ideas in their governments, and now nobody is booking vacations to those places anymore. But the problem is, instead of just injecting socialism into their veins, what they should have done was try democratic socialism. Yes, because we all know adding the term democratic in front of another dirty word makes that thing that you want in order to control people a little less dirty. I mean, sure, the New York City mayor promised free busing for everyone, and that hasn't happened yet, and is having a budget crisis for the city as well, as most socialist places do, since they need more of your money, since socialists keep running out of your money for some reason. But since you can count on your taxes to go up in New York City, because, I mean, how else is the government-run grocery store going to get built? Then I guess it's a no-brainer. Just elect more democratic socialists. And that is exactly what New York City's 13th district is doing with socialist candidate Daria-Liza Villa-Chevalier. Try to say that name 5 times fast, which sounds like the name of someone who is a proud American, right? Right? Wait, what was that? She has called to abolish the police? Oh, what was that? Wait, she posted on social media that she used the U.S. flag to wipe her hands because she forgot napkins? Oh, that's awkward. Oh, she also refused to condemn terrorist groups like Hamas for killing people? Oh, okay, okay. Oh, she doesn't support any form of deportation, including illegal immigrants who are convicted of murder, rape, and battery? Oh, wow. I really didn't see that one coming. Oh, what was that? She posted F Kamala Harris on social media and then walked it back? Nice. Yeah, she sounds like a pleasant person. Maybe she just needs to go to a 4-year university and, so she could better herself, open up her mind to various ideas and new concepts. And, in order to really grow, become an outstanding individual in our civil society. Oh, wait, she went to Columbia University? Oh, and she's working on her PhD. Oh, okay. Maybe she'll put that to good use. Well, let's not lose hope. There's always a chance. I mean, the Apostle Paul in the New Testament used to persecute Christians and then had an encounter with God on the road to Damascus and became essentially one of the most important figures in Christianity. So perhaps Daria Liza Avila Chevalier, however you say it, will have a Damascus Road experience herself and learn that democratic socialism is essentially and metaphorically and precisely what socialism has always been and what it will always be. A polished turd. So, if you have money and wealth and you don't know what to do with it, move to New York City. The government there will take good care of it like a polished turd. And if you don't want to move to New York City and let the government take care of all your money, well, congratulations. You're obviously a racist. My name is Andrew Reyes, and this is Faith in Politics with me, Andrew Reyes. Welcome back to the podcast, and I know before you start throwing stones at me, I just want to apologize and say I'm sorry that it's taken so long for me to put out another episode. I work a full-time job. I have a wife. I have 3 kids. My time is limited, so I always do my best to put out these episodes. And I know I'm hearing from a lot of you people. I have people at work saying, hey, I went onto your channel and I didn't see anything new. And, it's very endearing. I appreciate the support that a lot of you, a lot of people around me give me. So, that means a lot. So thank you. Thank you for your support. And I want to share I've received some comments, surprisingly, on this podcast, and one of the comments I received is from Spotify user Robin Hansen. Says, "Good show. Yes, you are a very good dad." Well, thank you very much for that comment. I appreciate it, and that is a very special person that I know personally. And thank you for listening. It means a lot that you actually listen. And it also makes me a little nervous, but thank you. And then, like I was saying earlier, from real life, a coworker was disappointed that he hopped onto my podcast and didn't see any new episodes. And so to you, I say, I'm sorry, I'm not perfect. Okay. I'm not perfect. And, this other coworker gave me a really nice, personal comment. He said, keep going with the podcast. He told me he really liked my perspectives and my opinions on the political sphere. And so then he started telling me that sometimes it just takes one video that will go viral and then your podcast will blow up and become very popular. And, that would be really cool. I'm not going to lie. That would be cool. But because, it would be cool to have a huge audience. But, that's not the purpose of the show. I'm not doing this to try to get popular or to reach fame. I was telling my wife about this earlier because she saw me typing on my computer the other day. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm just putting together my notes for my podcast. And she's like, oh, okay. Well, that must be really good. It probably keeps your brain sharp and active. And yes, that's one of the main reasons that I do this podcast is because, your brain is a muscle. You got to exercise it, right? So I like, hearing arguments. I like seeing what's in politics and what people say about Christianity and faith and religion and all that stuff. I see what's happening in the culture around me, and I have opinions. I have my personal thoughts about these things. So that's why I do this podcast, because I think it all kind of intersects. Faith, politics, religion, everything that's going on in the world. It all kind of meets somewhere, and I think it's interesting, and I like to kind of share my point of view. So thank you for the nice encouragement from all of you that keep giving me encouraging words, and for commenting on the podcast. And I know this podcast is called Faith and Politics, and I really do believe that everybody has some kind of faith. And me, I just choose to put my faith in Jesus, and that's because of the overwhelming evidence that I know that I have seen about Jesus. So everybody has faith, and I'm here just talking to you about my faith and my opinions and my perspectives. So with all that said, if you want to be featured on this podcast with like a little shout out with a comment, just comment. You can comment on Spotify, you can comment on YouTube, but also don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, review, follow the podcast, and you'll be up to date with everything that I'm doing here. Also, you can email me at faithandpoliticsandrew@gmail.com. And I will respond in one way or another, either directly or I will respond on the next podcast episode. But without further ado, because I want to keep this podcast short, let's just jump right into it. And this episode today is called Freedom of Speech, episode 28, Freedom of Speech. All right, let's dive right into the podcast. As I mentioned, a lot has happened in the news, and I wish I could cover it all, but I can't, okay? I really want to focus on making these episodes shorter. And, the last episode, the previous episode, the one where I destroy the infamous lawn sign, that one went on for like an hour and a half. And I don't want to keep doing that. All right, let's be real. Nobody wants to hear me talk for an hour and a half. Unless you do. And if you do, let me know. But I really don't think so. So I'm going to try to keep it short. I'm trying to keep it at 30 minutes. So I'm going to try to move rapidly. I know I say that all the time, but I'm really trying. So I'm going to... going a little bit out of order today. I'm going to talk about the latest in Iran first, and then blend faith and politics together right after that, because traditionally I would start off with my satirical monologue, then have a faith topic, and then a political topic. But I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I'm experimenting on this podcast, trying different things, trying to see what works. Like last week, I focused on the specific topic, the lawn sign, in this house we believe. So today, a little bit differently. First, I want to talk about some of the latest updates in the whole Iran debacle, Operation Epic Fury and all that stuff that's going on in Iran. It's been a wild ride. I really didn't think it was going to go this way. I had faith that it was going to be done and over with in 6 weeks as originally promised, but here we are. What has it? It's been like 2-3 months, something like that. I lost track of time, but it's this operation has taken longer than expected. I think the last time I spoke about the Strait of Hormuz, it was closed, and we all know the strait is that portion underneath Iran, there in the Middle East. You got shipping containers, cargo ships. They have to go through the strait. It makes the world go around economically. And the Strait of Hormuz was closed. and Trump was working on getting it open. Now, what happened? It would open, but then it would close. And then it would open again, and then it would close again. So it's really been a mess. And then there was a ceasefire agreement in that region, but then Iran kept shooting missiles, and the whole world was angry about it. Then there was a blockade by the U.S. at some point, and then Iran started violating it. So then after that, then Trump was trying to negotiate with Iran, and it didn't go as smoothly as he thought it would. Trump and Iran, they couldn't find an agreement for about a week. Trump says Iran can't have resources for any nuclear development. That's like the main purpose Trump had this operation. They just and we've known this in the U.S. for the longest time, that we just can't let Iran have nuclear weapons because they're kind of crazy and are crazy enough to use it for nefarious reasons. But they couldn't come with an agreement. Iran didn't agree with that sentiment that they shouldn't have any nuclear weapons capabilities. So in the end of all that brouhaha back and forth, an agreement was reached. And it was a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, that many political commentators pointed out that it resembled Obama's peace deal with Iran, back when Obama was president. So there were a lot of unhappy people about that. And the latest that I've heard as of me recording this podcast is that Iran violated the ceasefire agreement again, and the U.S. retaliated. And that's just another reason that Iran can't be trusted. They keep violating these ceasefire agreements, and then Iran keeps shooting drones and missiles all over the place. But at the very, very latest, as of June 28th, Iran violated the ceasefire agreement a second time. And now Trump is threatening to finish the job. So, some people might say, oh, the job should have been finished immediately at the start of this thing. But that wasn't the plan. So all in all, this has been a messy operation. And, there's a lot of unhappy people with this MOU because it seems to not accomplish Trump's original objectives. But, looking at this from, 100 feet up in the air, there are some good things that came out of this, in my opinion. One being that their Navy and military heavily destroy, like, some people say their Navy is underwater now. But and we destroyed Iran's leadership, the Ayatollah, and the new people were put in charge. And these new people in charge in Iran are people that we can better negotiate with, which, that's what we need to be diplomatic, have people that you can work with. And yes, the U.S. did incapacitate Iran's nuclear development, which, it's a good thing, not just for the region, but also for the world. And Iran's economy has definitely been hurt immensely because of the whole Strait of Hormuz being blocked. So Iran definitely is hurting. I'm surprised that they didn't cave in, which it does go to show that Iran is, they're a tough cookie. They're a tough cookie to break. I don't know if that means we underestimated their strength, but yeah, they're pretty resilient. That Iranian regime. But another good thing that's coming out of this is that the way this has gone, it shows the world that the U.S. is still the world's hegemon. You don't mess with the U.S. Trump is a peace through strength president, and it shows. And I think that's a good thing. You don't want a weak country that can easily be taken advantage of. And I think Trump is doing a good job with this operation to show that. So we'll see what comes out of that. We'll see what happens. It's getting pretty hot in Iran with the second ceasefire violation. So maybe on the next podcast, I'll give you an update. We'll have more news, more information about that. But with the Iran news out of the way, we're just going to put that aside. I want to, like I said, try something a little bit differently today. Like I said, I usually have a faith-based topic, then a politically charged topic, and then I openly just espouse my thoughts on those specific topics. But today I'm going to try to blend faith and politics together. And what do I mean? Well, today, this is what I'm trying to say. I'm fumbling my words. I'm looking at my notes here. I saw this clip and I heard an argument relating to speech and how speech is used in politics. And I think it's an important one. I'm a huge free speech guy. It separates the United States from almost every other country you can think of, this idea of free speech, or having the freedom of speech, I should say. And I think it's a big reason why Trump got elected. Of course, there's numerous reasons he got elected. Main reason is the Biden administration was very sloppy, and I think a lot of the United States voters saw Kamala Harris as a potential president and thought, I don't know if I can trust her. And then the crisis at the border was a big thing, illegal migration. And yeah, those are the big topics. So, and I think Trump being a pro freedom of speech guy, I think that's a reason why Trump got elected. In the 2010s, about 25 years ago, I started hearing this term, politically correct. Like, oh, that's not politically correct. Oh, that's not PC. And there was this PC culture that was kind of brewing. And that politically correct term just started being thrown around. And I was skeptical when I first started hearing that, because I was trying to figure out what they were trying to convey. And I think what the term politically correct, what the PC people were trying to do was sort of control speech. Now, what I find funny about political correctness is that it seems harmless at first, as if to say, we just want a polite society, or as if to say, we want our politicians to conduct themselves politely. And don't get me wrong, I'm all about living in a polite society. I think that's a good thing. And yeah, I think we should be able to filter people out of society based on, how bad people can be. But of course, that's why we have a justice system and prisons and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think speech and the words that you use are the same as, say, actual violence. So, but as I've stated on this podcast before, the people on the left, they conflate speech and violence. They say speech can be violent and that violence is just speech. But, what you've heard me say before on this podcast is no, speech is speech and violence is violence. And you got to separate those two and treat them as what they are. But yeah, this whole PC and politically correct stuff, I think it ruins society. And how, you might ask? Well, I think it ruins art, I think it ruins the culture, and I think it ruins politics. For example, in art, say comedy or comedians, I really do believe that comedy is an art form. I think there's an award show called the Mark Twain Awards, and it's for comedians, I believe. But comedy is an art form, and around that time, the 2010s, I don't know if this is just me, but when I listen to stand-up or like the popular stand-up comedians, they just felt a little unfunny to me. I don't know. It was hard to get me to laugh. I didn't think it was funny. A lot of it was just like shock humor, and I don't know. It just didn't do it for me. And currently I think of people like Jimmy Kimmel. I know there's like a feud between Trump and Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel has obviously gotten more political in his late night show and monologues, and every time I see clips of Jimmy Kimmel, I think to myself, wait, is he supposed to be funny or something? Because I'm not laughing. And he does claim to be a comedian, but even his own audience, I've seen clips of his own audience not really laughing at his jokes, and then he kind of just moves along as if like no one heard that. And and this is a guy that has like what, tens of or dozens of writers writing his stuff. But yeah, just comedy during this whole political correctness era just seemed to not be that funny to me. And I noticed this thing, I think it was Saturday Night Live. I think they're the ones that said during Obama's presidency, like, oh, we're not going to make any jokes about Obama because he is our first black president, and this is a big deal, so we can't make fun of him. And there was some studies done that, yeah, it shows that Saturday Night Live, like 90% of their skits when it was political would be jokes against people on the right or Republicans. Republican politicians were made fun of way more than Democrat politicians. And yeah, it just makes you think that, yeah, of course there's going to be biases everywhere, but when you do that, then you start to divide people. And art has its uses, but when it is used to divide people, it's probably not a good use of art. It's not a good use of comedy. And I think that's what was happening in art and the culture. And in the culture, because I said how it was changing culture, this whole political incorrectness is, there was a period of time where it was frowned upon to say things like gay or retarded in dialogue. Of course, I think that's changing now, and I'll explain why I think that is. But yeah, PC, I think, has made society worse because you get words being pushed by, elitists that they wish to change language. For example, like instead of using gendered pronouns, and this is the one that always stands out to me, is there was a period of time, and this was, coming out of like the universities, is the whole gendered pronouns thing, like the word Latino or Latina. Latino is a Latin male. Latina, a female, right? And then all of a sudden, I started seeing Latinx or Latinx. And it was almost as if, these high-educated people on their ivory towers were trying to change language to make language inclusive, which kind of actually diminishes the Latin culture in a way, because it's like they attempt to change societal norms that the majority do not associate with. And I think that whole terminology, the Latinx or Latinx, I think that's kind of died. But it did look like there was a push to try to make fetch happen. You know what I mean? Like in the movie Mean Girls. It's been so long since I've seen the movie Mean Girls, but there's that one girl that says, "Why do you keep trying to make fetch happen? Like, no one says the word fetch. Stop trying to make fetch happen." It's like, yeah, stop using the word Latinx, or Latinx. No one's using it. Just stop. It's cringy. So in other words, political correctness is simply a tool by the left to control speech and ultimately to control people's minds, which is the title of a book that I'm trying to finish. There's this book by Michael Knowles, and I know I'm going to sound like a Michael Knowles fanboy, but he's a interesting political commentator. He's very intelligent, but he wrote this book called Speechless: Controlling Words, Controlling Minds, which, it really made me think about these concepts. Now, gladly, I think political correctness is going away. And in part, I think it's because of Donald Trump. I think his rhetoric really lands with the average citizen. When he talks, he sounds like an everyday blue-collar American. And people can identify with that. So what I want to do now is I want to play this clip from a recent interview that the vice president, J.D. Vance, did with the New York Times, with a guy named Ross Douthat, I believe is how you pronounce it, which, I found interesting. And I just want to share my opinion and give you my commentary about that. So I'm gonna insert the video right here.
It also seems to me like the administration has distanced itself in different ways from some other sort of obvious expressions of Christian influence on politics. Some of them more sort of liberal coded, some of them more conservative coded.
Like what do you mean?
Like the administration has been more hostile than any prior Republican administration, to say nothing of Democrats, in the last 20 years to the way we do humanitarian aid. It has kept religious conservatives, pro-life organizations especially, at arm's length in a way that has led to a lot of criticism. And then, let's be honest, the tone of the administration is not consistently a Christian tone. There is a tone of aggressive uncharity to people who aren't on board with the administration's policies. So I would describe those as three areas where the administration has felt functionally post-Christian to me, and I'm curious what you think.
Well, so on the first point, the third point, but I want to address.
You can
it
work
first.
backward.
So on the tone thing, it's very hard to rebut this because it's like fundamentally unfalsifiable. Because for every clip that you could show me of me or the president or some cabinet secretary saying something that in your view is unchristian, I could show you another few clips of us doing something or saying something that is like very Christian. The nature of political communication in the era of mass media is that sometimes people are going to say jokes that are taken out of context. Sometimes people are going to make mistakes. I'm not saying I make mistakes. I talk about this in the book a little. In my book, Communion, available where books are sold, I talk about the own mistakes that I've made as a Christian leader
there is an
in America.
There is an apology to childless cat ladies. We don't need to get sidetracked by that. Go on.
But my point is, like, I'm not saying we're perfect, because we're not. My point is that the tone argument is, in some ways, I think people see what they want to see. And I also think that tonal arguments are ways of, frankly, policing working class ways of communication and covering them in elite preferences.
All right. So there was a lot that was talked about there, but I want to focus on the first thing, which is the interviewer says that the tone is not consistently a Christian tone. Ross Douthat claims the tone of the current president is not Christian. And I found this interesting. I mean, let's not forget that this administration has been one of the most pro-religious pro-religious rights and freedom presidents of my lifetime. I mean, he pardoned the praying grannies that were arrested simply for praying outside abortion clinics. You might have heard of that one under Biden's presidency. You know, these elderly grandmas, they would simply pray in front of, abortion clinics, to help young women change their minds that they, shouldn't kill their babies. I mean, and they were arrested for that, just for praying, which that boggles my mind too, because, for example, if you are of the persuasion, say, like an atheist that doesn't believe in God, and you see someone praying, an atheist would believe that they're not doing anything. So why arrest somebody for simply praying? Either it's because it is doing something, which I believe it does, but we have the freedom to pray. If you don't know what praying is, it's just talking to God. You can do it silently or you can do it audibly, but praying is just praying to God, having a conversation with God, a talk. So the fact that in this country you could get arrested just for praying, it's insane to me. And Trump pardoned those people that got arrested because, they're just praying. I don't know. It's wild. What else did Trump do? Trump had an executive order that was biblically and biologically based, that there are only two genders, male and female, as described in the book of Genesis and described in reality. What else did Trump do that shows that he is a very pro-religious freedom president? Now, he established the White House Faith Office. I didn't really know too much about this, but it's located in the West Wing of the White House. But he created a specific office for faith. I'm assuming like religious leaders, like pastors, priests, whoever. Maybe they get together or they focus on like religious policies and freedoms and or something along that line, something along those lines. But in this interview, the concern was about the tone of the president. And to me, that concern about tone, it seems leftist coded to me. It's like saying your tone is not Christian enough, or like he said, the administration feels post-Christian. Now, first of all, if you were to ask me if I think Donald Trump is a Christian, I would have to say no. But, but who am I to judge that? But he doesn't act or behave as a Christian should, like going to church, reading the Bible. Yes, Trump had his Trump Bible, which I think that was kind of weird. But, people like collector's items. So who am I to, as a free market capitalist, if you can make money off of something, then good for you. And if you're buying a Bible and might have Trump's name on it, and if you're reading it, then it's still a good purchase. But yeah, I don't think Trump's behavior is Christian, but a lot of his policies seem to favor Christians. So in that regards, I think that's good. Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He won the popular vote. So, a little over half of the voters in America wanted him to fix what they deemed issues of our time. And is he doing that? Yeah. And is it pretty? No. Things could be done a little nicer, I guess, but you don't expect to put a leader in charge because they're nice. I don't think that's how politics works. But this concern about the tone, it has remnants of political correctness to me. It's like an attitude of saying, I don't like the way you're saying things. Which is where J.D. Vance brings up the idea of tone policing quite brilliantly. He said policing the working class is... Let me try that one more time. Policing working class ways of communication and covering them elite preferences. What did I write down? He's saying that policing people that are just normal working class people is almost like elites, like, people that are haughty. It's like a way of policing them. And he gives this example right after the clip that I showed you. He gives an example how after the Biden administration, they had like this loving tone with the migrants coming into the country illegally, and how it was actually harming those involved. I mean, J.D. Vance was saying that Trump's policies are more moral because it was decreasing human trafficking. It was decreasing sex trafficking, decreasing drugs being smuggled in, which, of course, drugs harm society. So that was just an example of tone policing, and political correctness is, it gets conflated a little bit. Just because you sound nicer and maybe have this appearance of being more Christian-like doesn't mean the policies are any good. And I think what Trump is doing with the issue of the border and illegal immigration is doing better for people than it is harming people. Here's another example, which I heard from Michael Knowles. I know I'm sounding like a Michael Knowles fanboy again, but he gave this example. It's very compelling to me, about the use of the word retard or retarded. Now, some of you are probably gonna laugh, but it's actually really serious. Because he was giving this example how the word retard and retarded became a bad word socially. And it's funny, it reminds me of Michael Scott in The Office, where he goes, I think he gets called out for using the word retarded, and he's like, no, I don't really think that person is retarded. I just call him that when he acts retarded. It was a funny bit. I wish I could remember exactly how it went, but it was very funny. But this is the argument that was being made. The common working class person, just your normal regular dude, someone who works a 9 to 5, like a blue collar worker, he'll call his buddy retarded as a joke. Like, oh, look at that retard. He did something stupid. And, the haughty elites would look down on such vocabulary and say that that's lowbrow, or they'll say that's rude language and that's not so politically correct. But the difference is that the common working class person, say like a conservative, who might use that word in their vocabulary, the word retarded, they do not believe in treating someone who might be retarded or have Down syndrome. They don't see that person as less of a human being. But the leftist elites would definitely advocate for slaughtering babies in the womb if a doctor came out and said that, hey, this baby has an extra chromosome and will actually have Down syndrome and be retarded, as the word definitionally means. So that group of people will actually promote the killing of someone who is retarded. So the free speech folks that may lean towards, the right side of the political aisle may use some rude terms, but the folks on the left who are politically correct have no issue killing the retard because to them they are lesser than. Which goes back to the point I made a few episodes back that the left is politically violent. I've heard many arguments, especially on the debate of abortion, that, oh yeah, a baby in the womb is not a human. And if a baby is going to have Down syndrome, then yeah, the mom should be able to choose what they do and basically have the life of that baby in her hands. And to kill it is just as valid as letting it live, which obviously that's contrary to Christianity, where we believe that every life is valuable, even if someone has Down syndrome or anything like that. Every life is valuable in God's eyes because, well, we were created in the image of God. And yeah, every life is valuable to God. That's why Jesus died on the cross. And yeah, I mean, I am thankful that my children are healthy, and I understand there are people out there that have children that would have disabilities, and they are something special in society. Those parents that I see with children with disabilities, they're something special to me. And when I see that, they have something more. They have more patience and a little more virtue in my eyes when I see those parents with kids with disabilities. They're a type of hero to me. But yeah, there's a common phrase, actions speak louder than words, and there's some truth to that. Jesus said in the book of Matthew that it's not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth, this defiles a person. Of course, Jesus was talking about the Pharisees, the religious leaders of that time, when he said this. And, the Pharisees, they were the religious leaders of that time, and they were all about traditions and the rules. And Jesus said, basically, you can have your rules, but God cares about what's in your heart. And I think similarly, that's how people feel about Donald Trump is, he's kind of a brute. He's a boorish person. Absolutely. But you know what? He gets stuff done. Even with so much opposition, he gets stuff done. And that's what a president is supposed to do. A president is, to me, it's like a plumber. You hire a plumber to do a specific job, and you don't care what his personal belief systems are. You just care that he gets the job done. And that's what a good president does. He gets elected to do a job, and we just care that he gets the job done. But would it be nice if the president was a Christian? Sure, of course. Would it be nice if the president was polite and well-mannered? Sure, of course. But we had that with Barack Obama. He was the nice, polite, he was grandiose and had good speeches that moved people. But yeah, he hated the country. He said that he wanted to fundamentally change the country. And you don't say things like that if you love the country. You want to keep it as good as it can be if you love the country. But Obama said, we're going to fundamentally change the United States. Elect me. But yeah, he ruined the country in many ways, but that's a topic for another day. But to end this podcast and to make my point, because I was trying to keep it at 30 minutes. I think I'm going for an hour here. This is my first point. The First Amendment is a cornerstone of the U.S. Constitution, and it prevents the government from restricting 5 fundamental freedoms: freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and the freedom of petition. Now, thank God that the U.S. is one of those few countries that still has freedom of speech, because with it, we have the freedom to do everything else. And yes, at times, speech will be ugly, and we just have to acknowledge that fact. That's just the way it goes. But it will always be better to have the freedom to say what it is you have to say, to have the freedom to say what you believe, than to have any government try to limit what you are able to say. Because then your freedom will slowly be taken away, and before you know it, you will be arrested for your speech. Kind of like what we see happening in China and Russia and the UK and in Germany. And then slowly but surely, the government just starts controlling you. Because if they can control speech, they can control how you think, because you should be able to think clearly and express your ideas as best as possible. Kind of like what I'm doing here on this podcast. Like I said, this is an exercise, and I do my very best. I'm working on it. Practice makes perfect, but I'm exercising my mind, my brain, and I can only do that if I have freedom of speech. And you can only do that if you have freedom of speech. So with my freedom of speech, I just want to say 2 things. 1, socialism sucks. And 2, don't forget this one, keep up the faith.